There's no doubt really that the tactics that they used were, as we've said, completely appropriate.
But the watchdog said there was not enough communication about changing events. We'll have all the latest. Also this lunchtime, Black Britons who are less likely to take up the COVID vaccine are urged to get their jab by celebrities and religious leaders.
People want to get information from the faces that they recognize, people that they trust. And the key word here is trust.
Roughly half of the UK population now has antibodies against COVID, either through vaccination or being infected. And the rising popularity of Cornwall as a place not just to holiday, but to live.
And coming up on BBC News, the Republic of Ireland team would have their managers' backing should they decide to follow Norway and others in protesting against human rights before their friendly with World Cup hosts Qatar.
Good afternoon and welcome to the BBC News at 1. An official review into the policing of the London Vigil held in memory of Sarah Everard has found that officers did not act inappropriately or in a heavy-handed manner. Footage from the event on Clapham Common showed the women being detained and the force was widely criticised, including by senior politicians. But the Chief Inspector of Constabulary, Sir Tom Windsor, says that officers had done their best to disperse the crowd peacefully and remained calm and professional when subjected to abuse. Sarah Everard was last seen alive in the area on March the 3rd. A police officer, Wayne Cousins, has been charged with her murder. Well, let's go over now to our correspondent, Sangeeta Maiska. Sangeeta.
So Rita, it's worth taking a step back just to remember why this report has been published. It's because it was ordered by the Home Secretary, Priti Patel. She did that after there was a wide-scale public outcry of the police tactics used by the Met when it was policing a vigil held in memory of Sarah Everard a week after the arrest of a serving police officer. At the time, the Metropolitan Police said that they had had to go in and use dispersal methods for that crowd because there were social distancing restrictions still in place. People who were at that vigil said that there were a small number of troublemakers there, and what the police had done was go in with heavy-handed tactics. Now, throughout, the Met has consistently said that this was not the case. And today on social media, we've seen people claiming that this report is a whitewash. That has been vehemently denied by the man who led the inspection team. His name is Matt Parr.
We've seen all the evidence. I'm not sure that anybody else has. We're an inspectorate that's not used to, or that makes no bones of the fact that we criticise the police a lot. It's part of our job. On this occasion, however, I don't think there's anything. There's no doubt really that the tactics that they used were, as we've said, completely appropriate.
Now, it's worth underlining that that report says that the police faced a huge amount of abuse and remained calm in the face of it. However, it goes on to say that images from that night have created reputational damage for the Metropolitan Police, and that the next day, had they taken a more conciliatory tone, that would have been much better.
Sangeeta, many thanks. The comedian Sir Lenny Henry and dozens of black celebrities have joined forces to urge Black Britons to get vaccinated against COVID-19. They've written an open letter and recorded a short film telling people to trust the facts and the experts. The move comes as figures show that vaccination rates are considerably lower among Black Britons than among the white population. Here's our correspondent, Adina Campbell.
Dear mums and dads,
grandparents,
aunties, uncles,
some of Britain's biggest black stars who've now turned their attention to the COVID crisis.
we don't want you to get sick.
They've come together in this short film with one clear message.
And when your turn comes, take the jab.
With ongoing concerns about vaccination take-up rates being much lower in black communities, Sir Lenny Henry wanted to take action. As well as creating this video, he's written an open letter encouraging people from ethnic minority backgrounds to have a COVID vaccine.
What we say in the video and what I say in the letter is please talk to a medical professional. Do do not go to Dave down the pub for your information or Uncle Charlie on the Zoom call. Go to a medical professional, your GP, or to nhs.com and get the proper information so that you're properly informed and take the jab, because we don't want anybody else to die.
Latest vaccination figures from the Office for National Statistics, looking at the over 70s, show big differences between ethnic groups. 90% of people from white backgrounds were given a jab, compared with just 68% of those with a black Caribbean heritage. And it was even lower for people from black African groups, just 58%. It's a problem the government and health authorities are well aware of, despite months of targeted campaigns for these communities.
Consistent themes keep coming up. Is the vaccine safe? What's in the content of the vaccine? Do I have anything to worry about? Is it going to protect me from severe disease and death? How confident can I be about its protection? So we listen to these concerns from members of the community.
Black communities have been some of the most vulnerable during the pandemic, up to 4 times more likely to die from coronavirus or end up in intensive care. But research shows they're also more likely to be reluctant about having a COVID vaccine. London, the most diverse place in the UK, has some of the lowest vaccination take-up rates according to latest data. In boroughs like Newham, just 59%, and it was the same figure in Kensington and Chelsea, while in Lambeth, 63% of people had a COVID jab.
In the Caribbean and African Health Network, we've been carrying out what we call health talks. Every Saturday for 1 hour, we engage the community and we talk to them about what their concerns are. And one of the main thrusts of these talks have been about educating people about the vaccine, answering their questions, allaying their fears. People want to get the information from the faces that they recognize, people that they trust. And the key word here is trust.
There are a number of reasons why some people from black communities are more hesitant about being vaccinated. Existing health inequalities and historical racial injustices mean they're more likely to not trust the authorities.
We know it's safe.
And this latest video by some of the most well-known faces in British television explores those fears. It's hoped these voices will now help persuade more people to get vaccinated.
Don't let coronavirus cost even more black lives.
Adina Campbell, BBC News.
Around half the UK population now has antibodies against coronavirus, according to new figures, either because they've had a vaccine or recovered from the disease. Now a new finger prick blood test has been designed to help researchers track how effective vaccines are against new strains of the virus. Health correspondent Dominic Hughes reports.
Have you had a COVID vaccine at all?
No. As the vaccination programme rolls on, its impact is becoming clear. Around half of the UK population now has antibodies to the coronavirus, up from a third in the last survey by the Office for National Statistics.
Just relax your arm, sharp scratch.
Now, a new finger prick blood test will help give researchers an even better insight into how vaccines are performing. More than 30 million people in the UK have now had their first jab. In the past year, 400,000 volunteers have been regularly swabbing their throats and noses to check for coronavirus antibodies. Now researchers will be able to take data from the finger prick tests of around 150,000 volunteers.
It's enabling us to do things faster, it's enabling us to do things at greater scale, and it's enabling us really to be able to make sure that no areas of the population are invisible. We've got estimates right across our population.
There have been various attempts to develop an antibody test, not all of them successful. The new one is cheap to produce, reliable and easy to use, and will give scientists vital information on how vaccines cope with new variants of the virus.
It's also important not just how effective they are, but also how long they're effective for, and that's something else that's really useful about this study. By tracking the same individuals over a period of time, you can get a sense of how long these antibodies are detected in the blood over a long period.
The mass vaccination programme is a huge national effort to get as many of us as possible to safely develop antibodies without risking getting ill. And scientists say they need the data from regular testing to keep track of how we're all reacting.
We know that 50% of people get coronavirus and don't have a single symptom, and other people sadly have it so badly that they end up in hospital and die. So we have this huge variation naturally, and so it's only to be expected that we will also see variation in people's response to vaccination.
In the ongoing fight against coronavirus, reliable data will be vital, keeping vaccines effective and long-lasting, even when faced with new variants. Dominic Hughes, BBC News.
Boris Johnson has joined more than 20 world leaders, including President Macron of France and the German Chancellor Angela Merkel, in calling for a new international treaty to help deal with future pandemics. In an article published in newspapers around the world, they say that coronavirus poses the biggest global challenge since the Second World War. They agree it's their responsibility to ensure that the world learns the lessons of COVID-19. The long-awaited report from the World Health Organization seen by the BBC suggests that COVID-19 is likely to have been passed from human beings from bats through another animal. It also dismisses claims that the virus escaped from a lab in China, calling the suggestion extremely unlikely. The study is due to be officially released later this afternoon. The Business Secretary, Kwasi Kwarteng, has defended the former Prime Minister David Cameron over his dealings with the financial company Greensill Capital, which collapsed earlier this month. But Labour has called for an investigation into the extent of government access given to the firm's founder when Mr Cameron was Prime Minister. Our political correspondent Ian Watson is in Westminster for us now. And Ian, this is actually about more than a former Prime Minister's involvement with a failed financial company.
That's right, Rita. The reason I think we're talking about this now is primarily because Greensill Capital, which collapsed this month, was a major backer of Liberty Steel, and that in turn has put jobs at Liberty Steel in the balance. And at the moment, the future of Liberty Steel is still uncertain. But it has also raised, as you mentioned, questions about the involvement of the former Prime Minister, David Cameron. The Sunday Times and the Financial Times reported that he had lobbied Treasury officials and even texted the Chancellor to try to get, unsuccessfully as it turned out, greater access for Greensill Capital to government-backed loans. Now, a lobbying watchdog says he hasn't done anything wrong, and government ministers, including the Business Secretary, have defended his recent activities. But the Sunday Times also reported that back when David Cameron was Prime Minister, he gave what they said was almost unparalleled access to Whitehall departments and to government agencies to none other than Lex Greensill, the man behind Greensill Capital. And Labour are calling on the Standards Watchdog to investigate this. And when I spoke to the Business Secretary, Kwasi Kwarteng, earlier, he said he'd no problem with the Standards Committee or indeed any other parliamentary committee here at Westminster doing just that.
I think if people, committees, want to look at what happened, I think it was more than 5 years ago, I think that's absolutely right for them to do that. I'm not in a position to rake up what was going on within Whitehall 5 or 6 years ago. What I am focused on is trying to make sure that we can reopen the economy and, as you say, build back better. But if committees want to look at that behaviour, that's up to them.
Now, the Standards Committee say they don't investigate individual cases, but they are looking more widely at the issue of transparency in government. David Cameron himself hasn't commented on the allegations, but there are calls today for the rules around lobbying to be reviewed. But the more pressing problem, I think, for ministers, Rita, really is the fate of Liberty Steel.
Ian, many thanks. Our political correspondent Ian Watson there. Time is just coming up to 1:15, our top story this lunchtime. An official review into the policing of the London Vigil, held in memory of Sarah Everard, has found that officers did not act inappropriately or in a heavy-handed manner. And record numbers of people are looking to move to Cornwall, but it benefits local people.
Coming up on BBC News, already with ground to make up in their World Cup qualifying group, Wales play the Czech Republic in Cardiff tonight, having lost their opening match to Belgium and without 3 players sent home for a breach of protocol.
More evidence will be heard today in the trial of the white former police officer accused of killing George Floyd in the US city of Minneapolis. Yesterday, the jury was shown video footage of Mr. Floyd gasping for breath as the officer, Derek Chauvin, knelt on his neck. The defense argues that Mr. Floyd's health conditions and drug use contributed to his death. Lebu Diseko is following the trial.
Association. Thank you. You may be seated.
Derek Chauvin finally facing a jury of his peers. The central question for both sides in this case: what caused George Floyd's death?
We're going to ask that you find him guilty.
The prosecution says it was Chauvin kneeling on his neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds.
On May 25th of 2020, Mr. Derek Chauvin betrayed this badge when he used excessive and unreasonable force upon the body of Mr. George Floyd. That he put his knees upon his neck and his back, grinding and crushing him until the very breath, no, ladies and gentlemen, until the very life were squeezed out of him. Counsel, Mr. Chauvin.
The defense argued that the officers were facing an increasingly hostile crowd, distracting them from Mr. Floyd's care. His death, they said, was the result of drug use and poor health.
The evidence will show that Mr. Floyd died of a cardiac arrhythmia that occurred as a result of hypertension, his coronary disease, the ingestion of methamphetamine and fentanyl, and the adrenaline flowing through his body, all of which acted to further compromise an already compromised heart.
Among the opening day's witnesses, a 911 dispatch worker who was watching the arrest via a police camera. She was so alarmed by what she saw that she rang the officer's supervisor. Also on the stand, a passerby who tried to intervene on Mr. Floyd's behalf. A martial arts expert who recognised Chauvin's knee on Mr. Floyd's neck as a type of chokehold, which could be fatal.
Or you see Floyd fade away, slowly fade away, and like the fish in the bag, you see his eyes slowly, pale out and again slowly roll to the back of his eyes.
This is the most high-profile police brutality case to be tried in the US for decades. Race isn't being mentioned in court, but its significance is inescapable. People across this country and the world are watching what happens here closely. Rita, BBC News, Minneapolis.
And let's go over to Minneapolis now and speak to our correspondent Gary O'Donoghue. Gary, as Lebu was saying, there's huge attention on this case. What can we expect today?
Yes, of course, this case being broadcast across America and across the world, so a lot of people watching this, a lot of eyes on this. They had some technical issues at the end of proceedings yesterday, which means they will begin again this morning with Donald Williams, that witness we saw at the end of Lebu's piece there, talking about how he witnessed, how he looked on as Derek Chauvin knelt on George Floyd's neck for those 9 minutes and 29 seconds. He is a martial arts expert. He was able to describe what he thought was going on. And in fact, there's cell phone video evidence of him calling out to Derek Chauvin to tell him to stop doing this, and using some pretty colourful language in the process, along with those other passers-by. The interesting thing, Rita, about this trial is that we don't know who the witnesses are going to be next. There's no published list. It is a surprise to us in the same way as it's a surprise to everyone else when people get called. Big question, of course, will Chauvin himself take the stand? Will the defence decide to call him? I suspect they haven't made that decision at this stage. They want to see how everything else goes in terms of the eyewitnesses, the medical evidence, the expert evidence, before they make that kind of decision. Rita.
Gary, many thanks. Gary O'Donoghue there. Well, since the killing of George Floyd last year, many in the world of football have shown their solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement. One of the players in the US women's national team, Crystal Dunn, is part of a project to ensure lasting change. The initiative aims to roll out anti-racism training across US football to thousands of coaches, staff and players. Ria Chohan.
Where we are right now, the world is in outrage.
Last month, Crystal Dunn and her US teammates, one of the most socially conscious sports teams in the world, collectively stood for the national anthem before a game, after almost a year of kneeling in protest against systemic racism.
No one can really sit here in 2021 and be like, wow, police brutality, what do you mean? That exists? It's kind of like we're past that point of bringing awareness. Now I think people need to be acting and, not just getting on board just because they're like, oh, we're part of the trend now. What I'm seeing more and more now is my teammates using their platform, being more confident in using their voice, and to the police.
But when she first went to the police, Richard's mother says she wasn't taken seriously.
They told me that I was told that Richard was an adult. He can make his decisions. He can go out and come back whenever he feels like. Fine, but he's a young adult with a medical condition. And he has left home without his medication. No jacket, no money. So I am worried, I'm concerned by his well-being. I need help. I need them to look for him for me.
The Met Police say our officers have been working tirelessly to locate Richard, using all investigative opportunities and data inquiries, speaking with witnesses and trawling CCTV. Now the search continues to find Richard, with officers asking anyone with any information to come forward. Charlotte Wright, BBC News.
A man whose heavily pregnant wife died after contracting coronavirus has said she shouldn't have been working as a nurse in the early stages of the pandemic. Mary Ajapong died in April last year at the Luton and Dunstable Hospital where she worked. Her baby daughter survived. The inquest into her death has just concluded. Joe Black reports.
Morning. Going to work. Look at this one.
Mary Ajapong was a much-loved nurse. When she died, she was only 28 years old. Her husband said she was so worried about bringing coronavirus home from work, she would remove her clothes at the front door and shower immediately. She even started sleeping in the spare room to protect her family. This inquest hearing was told the ward where Mary worked was used by COVID patients after she was signed off work in March with back problems. On April the 5th, she was admitted to hospital with breathing difficulties, but she didn't require oxygen therapy, so was discharged with a course of antibiotics. 2 days later, her health worsened, so she was readmitted and a coronavirus test she'd taken came back positive. Hours later, her daughter was delivered by caesarean section and survived. But days later, Mary's condition deteriorated and she died in intensive care. Doctors told the hearing they were satisfied with the level of care and monitoring they provided. The coroner said she had not been pointed to any systemic failures at the hospital.
Yeah, who's that?
Wow. But Ernest Boateng says he and his 2 small children feel lost without a wife and a mother. He has campaigned for extra protection for mothers-to-be and does not want Mary to have died in vain. Joe Black, BBC News.
Well, we can speak to Joe now outside the coroner's court. Joe, what's the coroner had to say?
Well, Rita, the hearing has just finished in the last few minutes, and you can probably just see over my shoulder, Mary's widower, Ernest Boateng, is just there speaking to reporters, giving his reaction to what's been said during this hearing. So we'll listen to him later and catch up with him about what he's got to say. But we heard about Mary's cause of death, which was multi-organ failure and COVID-19. The senior coroner here said it remained unclear where and when her exposure to the virus had occurred. So the scope of this inquest didn't include that. We heard that Mary was the first pregnant woman that the trust had dealt with, the first pregnant woman with suspected COVID-19. So that was heard during this inquest. The coroner, Emma Whitting, said Mary's death was a tragedy, not just for her friends and family, but for wider society too. And she then went on to say it was important that we all learn from the lives lost in this pandemic. She then also talked about how the Prime Minister has indicated a full and public inquiry might take place into the pandemic. She said, I urge him to proceed as soon as is practicable. Like I say, we will catch up with Mary's widower in just a few minutes, but he's already talked about the pain and loss he's suffered as a result of Mary's death.
Joe, thank you. Now it's one of the UK's most popular tourist destinations, and now it's becoming an increasingly sought-after place to live. Record numbers of people are moving to Cornwall to seek a new life by the sea. It's bringing widespread and rapid change for local communities, as John Maguire reports.
It's long been a hot spot for holidaymakers.
from the southwest, 18 or 19 degrees. You can see lower values for the north and across the east coast of England. By the time we reach Friday, we're all in that cooler air, including most of England and Wales. So it's going to be a chilly day, but in the sunshine, it will feel quite pleasant with highs around 12 or 13 degrees. So it's chilly to end the week, and as we head on into the Easter weekend, we open the floodgates to an even colder Arctic blast of air, which will also introduce a few wintry showers, not even just to northern areas. We'll like to see some settling snow on the hills, so a bit of a shock to the system for all of us as we reach the end of the week.
Okay, thank you. That is all from us. Have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.